and welcome to the Positive Traction Show with Coach Henry. Thank you for joining me on this amazing journey. And today, again, another fabulous guest. I'm really excited for you guys to hear her story, her whys, her pivot points in life. Without further ado, who are you? What's your name?
Who am I?
And yeah, why are you here? Just joking. So
I don't know.
yeah.
My name is Brittany Duddy. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And
Wait,
Yeah.
this is not, I'm not in a session, everybody. Okay. That's what she does for a living. Sorry. I just want to make sure they knew I wasn't like getting therapy,
Yeah, no.
but I probably need it. So.
We're not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm have a private practice in Westlake Village.
Congrats.
In Southern California. And I specialize in trauma. Yeah.
Well, that's as easy as you said that. One of the reasons that I was drawn to it, because when you visualize therapists, licensed therapists, the whole thing you said, they're not always, coming as a cute package as you. And that does make a difference, because I think it sets a tone of laying a different groundwork for people. But what I really want to get into with you is one of the initial things that you and I have talked about in the past is your why. And I need to start there, because this wasn't like you started off in life going, oh my gosh, this is a passion, a dream, I want to help people. No, how you got here is quite interesting. And the age factor, because I don't like to add, women their ages, but it is important, because I feel that this premise of this show is inspiration, Britt. It's to inspire people to apply things into their life to be better. And your story is an inspirational story, because it allows people to go, wait a minute, I'm going down this path in life, and Brittany did it. And Brittany's going to share a couple steps of what made her do it. And hopefully they're inspired to, if they're not on the right track, they can also. So can you bring us back to how you came up to like, I want to be a therapist now?
Yeah, it's a journey. And, I always think back to, it's really funny how I ended up here, because I'll never forget when I was, an adolescent, I went to therapy for the first time. And, because I was acting like a normal teenager, but I'm the oldest. So my parents were like, what's wrong with you? You were so happy, and now you're so like sad all the time. And and I was like, I'm just going through puberty, but they didn't know what to do. So they're like, therapy, help.
Drop you off, pick you up better later.
Yeah. And so I really enjoyed it. Like I think I'm naturally drawn to introspection and, gaining insight and doing inner work and stuff like that. Which has always kind of been part of my journey. And I remember being in the car, I have like still a visual memory of it, and telling my mom, like, I'm going to be a therapist when I grow up, right? But then cut to like, I wanted, to be in the entertainment industry, and that, I never like thought about that again. But now that I'm here, I think back to, I'm like, oh, even when I was younger, I kind of, that seed was planted, and so, just throughout my, early 20s and throughout my 20s into my early 30s, I obviously loved therapy and my own inner work and spiritual work and just all that stuff. And I found it really helpful for myself and just everything I was going through in my life. And I just, I had one of those pivotal moments of like, asking God for like clarity and, my life's not working the way that it was. And I was just at this breaking point of like, what do I do? And
absolutely. Look, and I want to give some premise. You, especially at that time, you're a single mom. You felt the entertainment, the kind of the rock and roll vibe.
Yeah.
You're going down that path, and all of a sudden, mid-30s, if I could say, right? Yeah. You're sitting here going, okay, this is not where I thought I would be in my life. And I'm saying this because, again, it is an important factor for people out there at any age that you can pivot, you can redirect. So at that point, you're talking to God, you're trying to hear like, okay, this is not what I signed up for. Can you walk us through at that point when you, because mind you, correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't have the schooling yet. You didn't have a lot of things yet, which you walk us through right
Mm-hmm.
now. So how did you really? This is the initial why, the first why that I want you to share is
Okay.
what made you at that point go, okay, I'm going to completely pivot 180. So take us there.
Well, I mean, there were little things that happened along the way, but I'll give you like, the moment of truth for
Oh, I like
me,
that. The moment of truth.
right?
Yeah.
The moment of truth, you know, was I was working, a job in the entertainment industry, long hours, and here I was a single mom, newly single mom because I had just split,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't getting home till like 8 o'clock at night. My daughter was like in after school care. Then I'd have a nanny come and get her, and then bring her home. And I'm like, in this one night, I'm just like looking at her sleeping, and I'm like, this is not the
Mm-hmm.
life that I want. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to, come home and see my daughter for like an hour and then have to put her to bed and then
Right.
like do it all over again.
Right.
And I wasn't happy. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And then, but the real thing for me, I kind of realized like being a mom is like the most important thing to me, And I had, just to go back a little, I had kind of, that seed was growing. Like I was always kind of like imagining, like, oh, it would be nice to go back to school and, do that. But then it was like, I have to make money and I have
Right.
to have a job and I
Well,
can't do that. I can't do that.
absolutely, and that's why I want to interject there, Britt, because I just felt the more I thought about your story,
Yeah.
and the more I was really excited to have you back on the show. And guys, for the record, when I say back on the show, Britt was kind enough to do we did a little pilot that no one's going to see. Maybe we'll have bloopers one day, and we didn't record the audio very well, so we couldn't use it. But I'm glad that you're here again because as I thought of your story, these are the three things to me that I'd like you to just one, you just said it. You have to make money,
Mm,
but part of that to me, you're going to share in a minute, you had to sacrifice. You
yeah.
had to buy your ego. You had to buy pride. So I definitely want you to talk about
That
that.
was hard.
Yep, yep. So we're going to, two, you realized that the most important thing you said it was you want to be a mom.
Yeah.
And you weren't being the best mom you can be under those circumstances.
Mm-mm.
But the third part of this, and then it's back to you, is the entire commitment that you said, I'm willing to give up something now. And I know Stevie is a typical teen too right now, so she's not going to understand those sacrifices quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
But as she gets older, she will reflect upon those, seeing you get in there and going back to school and all that. So I'm going to bring it back to you, but I really wanted to highlight that because
Yeah.
I want people at any age that are listening to this show or watching us on YouTube to be able to go, look at, you did something about something. You
Yeah.
did it,
Mm.
and it brought you to this point. But the first why, now it's triggering, now it's all coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, it's this movement.
Yeah.
So take us to the ego and the pride that you had to bite. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I have to say, I couldn't have done what I did, I believe, without like surrendering to a higher
Yeah.
power.
Absolutely.
Right.
I agree with you.
For me, it's God,
Yeah.
for whoever, but it was not of the ego, right? It was definitely, I kind of, in that night where I kind of had that moment of truth, I was like, it kind of came clear to me, like, I've been wanting to kind of do this thing, but I've been putting it off because I felt pressure to make money and to have a job and all these things. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. But like, show me if that's what I'm supposed to, kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
along the way, like, obviously I had to like apply, for the master's program, and I had to see if I could get student loans, and I like all those steps of the way, I surrendered it to God. And I was like, okay, if this is what you want me to do,
Mm-hmm.
then this will just all work out. Like,
Yeah.
I'll find a way, because I didn't know how I was going to get the money to go back to school. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know, how I was going to make it work financially. I didn't know if I would get into any school, because
Right.
I did, right out of high school, I did go and get my bachelor's, but the mindset at the time was I was doing it just to make my like parents happy. And in my mindset, I was like, I'm working in the entertainment industry and I don't really
Right.
need this degree, and this is just a waste of my time. But I did it. but I didn't get the best grades. So my GPA was like terrible, you know?
Right.
So I'm like, what grad program am I going to get into? Like, there were a lot of things that I felt were obstacles that I just surrendered. And I was like, okay, if this is my path, then it'll work out. And if it doesn't, then I know this isn't my path. And and
I
I'll
love
do
that.
something else.
Britt, and again, I'm only stopping you because I want people to hear what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. And as you unpacked, and by the way, yeah, I believe 100% in giving it up and walking. And when it's meant to be, the path will be cleared. And it was for you. You know, like you said, you had a lot of people stay in that what if land and the doubt land and the it's not for me land. Okay. But you didn't. You gave it up. You started walking. Signs were becoming clear because you had to overcome grades that just got you
Yeah.
by, money, and not just for the school, but to live, survive.
Yeah.
There was so many factors, like you said, but here are that. So I love hearing that. And I want to fast forward a little bit past that now to you're in this program now. How did you feel? And I never asked you this the first time, but I wanted to know your first day in class. You're right there, your first day, or maybe it was your second day, when you're sitting in that class going, damn, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Hey, tell me that.
It was exciting. And you want to know what? I was like one of the youngest people in the program.
That's awesome.
Because I did a cohort program, so it's like you're with the same people throughout the whole 2-year master program. So I was able to do it with the cohort, and I was one of the youngest, in my mid-30s. So it honestly that opened my eyes too, where I'm like, you can go back to school at any age. Like I know a lot of people in my life that are like, oh, I could never go back to school, or I could never, I'm too old. And it's like, there were, the oldest I think was like 78.
Wow.
She was getting her master's
Yeah.
in psychology, and so that was inspiring. And actually I felt, even more like, okay,
Well, and that's why I'm saying, and that's why I'm bringing these highlights to you, because sometimes when we're in it, all of us, we sometimes kind of run through them and forget. And like you said, here you are, your mid 30s, taking on something new that all the things said no, but you still walked, you surrendered, the path became clear. Now you're sitting here, and that's what I'm saying is that you're not your typical marriage, trauma, therapist, counselor, all those beautiful things. And I think that's important because there's a lot of people that need what you're offering that always have a certain stereotype. And this is what I hope you continue to inspire through your group sessions and other things that you can share with others. Like, hey, I'm here. I care. I have a unique way of doing things. We'll talk about you call it the nerdy part, the scientific part that you like. We'll get to that in a second. So, okay, so you felt great, one of the youngest. So that also adds a little boost of confidence. Like, well, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So as you're now moving, and that was the first why you wanted better, and now you're let's say finishing up school. Now here comes the next challenge. Like, well, what am I going to do with this? So tell me about your practice. Now you went from a therapist, well, you still are, of course, to now you're an entrepreneur. You are a business owner, and let's go through that because that had its own next set of potential doubts.
Yeah. Well, again, I learned from, the process of making this choice and going through like going back to school and everything is the power of surrender, right? So it's just I again am just surrendered, if I'm was guided to get this degree and get licensed, then I trust that like who I'm meant to help is going to come my way. And I always quote, a lot of the Gen Z probably won't know this, but Field of Dreams.
Oh, I quote that all the time.
What?
Build it,
build it, they will come. So that is
100%.
like
Yeah.
like what I tell myself.
I love
I'm like,
that.
if you build it, they will come. And I
Yes.
just like surrender,
Amen.
surrender, right?
Amen.
Where it's like, I built this private practice and I trust that I mean, don't get me wrong. I have moments of like where I'm like, oh my God, like,
Yeah.
what if nobody comes and what if, I'm
Yeah.
a failure? But I just, have to keep surrendering and keep trusting that, and so far it's been, knock on wood, so far it's been pretty good.
Well, and again, that's why I love unpacking that,
Yeah.
because you went from a redirection movement,
Mm-hmm.
then entrepreneurship is its own set of doubts and
Yeah.
reality checks.
Yeah.
And now you are able to say, like, no, this is, you said it, you
Yeah.
private practice.
Yeah.
Okay, Britt, you did it. And yes, surrendering and God provided, but you
Yeah.
stepped.
I don't think I could have done it though without a strong, spiritual base of, surrendering. Honest, just me personally.
Sure.
Like I am, without that, I am a nervous wreck. Right. If I'm just trying to do it for my ego and just
Yeah.
trying to do it for my own will,
Right.
I'm totally in my head. I'm totally like doubting myself and, you know, um, and I don't think I could have, I would have gotten in my own way a million
Absolutely.
times and I would have stayed scared and I would have stayed small and I would have, but because I had my own spiritual practice like throughout, I think I started in my early 20s, really, practicing. And then, I had through the years gotten, stronger in my faith that I'm like, I don't think I could have be here now without feeling like I was being helped and guided.
Absolutely.
And
Okay.
that's just me personally. I
Yeah,
mean,
but that's, this is about you today.
yeah,
This is about you and the
yeah,
people that are going to listen and watch.
yeah,
And how many people, remember, we're going to, not to fast forward to the last why, but the last why is what are we doing with what we have, right? But
mm-hmm,
but there's a middle ground before we get to that great question, because that's going to open up the doors to many things. But that's what I'm saying. This started
mm-hmm,
as a moment that you were unhappy. You were
mm-hmm,
probably trying to put a lot of your happiness on someone else, other things, people.
yeah,
You then realize, look, I don't want to be a victim. I don't want
mm-hmm,
to be dependent upon this or him or that to
mm-hmm,
make me happy.
mm-hmm,
Therefore, you surrendered. You started stepping. Surrendering
mm-hmm,
is one thing. And that's why in one of the books I just finished, and I think I told you about it, you got to believe in God, or in
mm-hmm,
faith, or people do.
yeah,
Two, you got to apply it.
yep,
But then the third part, and this is the part that you are living, is that living it. You
mm,
stepped. You could talk about God all you want, and you could be praying all day long. But until you stepped of some sort, until you act of some sort, then there's no way that could ever manifest to more.
mm,
And you did. So
mm.
your private practice now. So now, before we get into that next section, tell us about the techniques that you do use
Mm-hmm.
to help people. Because now you said you specialize in trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So for those listening, for
Mm-hmm.
those that maybe want a approachable therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to open up doors to people going, wait a minute, oh, she's normal and she's nice and she has issues of her own, like all of us do, but
Uh-huh.
she's getting through them and she's now helping people. What is your method?
Well, it's very eclectic. I kind of use a lot of different modalities.
Yes.
So it's not like one size fits all. It's really, the person coming in, what they're wanting to work on, what their goals are, for therapy, what kind of trauma they're coming in with. I mean, I am biased. I think we all literally being born is traumatic.
Right.
Okay, not to be dramatic,
Right.
but
Yeah.
if you really think about it, it's like, wouldn't we all just rather be in a womb, just cuddled, like all nuzzled and
Yeah.
cozy and
Right.
warm and safe, It's like,
Right.
and then we're like ripped out and we're like, whoa, where am I?
Yeah.
Bright lights and noises and like,
Yeah.
So we all have some, we have experiences in life. Now, there are people who are more resilient, right, than
Mm-hmm.
others and who can
Mm-hmm.
kind of just get by and not ever need therapy or need to come in. And then there's people who are extremely traumatized because they grew up in abusive households or neighborhoods or communities. And we live in a world that's very traumatizing. I mean, just look at all the wars that are going on
Yeah.
and the poverty and in certain
It's hard
areas.
times.
And it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, so back to your question of, again, it's not one size fits all, but, and I don't, if someone's just wanting to come in for talk therapy, I'm not necessarily doing trauma work with them, but
Right.
I'm always looking through a trauma lens, I say. It's like I'm looking through a lens that is addressing, trauma is like a disease of the nervous system, basically, right? Something's gone awire,
Right.
and you're dysregulated. Your body's dysregulated. Your mind's dysregulated. You're just kind of living from, what am I trying to say? I'm kind of spaced out there.
No, it's
Sorry.
okay.
But they, I'm looking through that lens, the trauma lens, to, you know, as we're talking, to kind of it helps me understand and conceptualize, how can I help them and where
So
can I guide them,
so let me ask you this on a applicable level. The word trauma. So when I hear that word
It's so
without
overused.
right, so when I hear that word, so let's say
Sorry.
what when you're trying to unpack somebody,
Yeah.
normally you have a little history, of course, of why they're there, and
Yeah.
they might come in with their own conceptions of why they think they're there. You, within your techniques, like you said, not one size fits all. You obviously want to listen, and then there's a certain point where you feel like, okay, maybe it's why they came in, but let's go a little deeper. Let's go for the cause of the actions, not the actions themselves,
Yeah.
but what made you do them.
Yeah.
And that's when you have to unpack carefully, because trauma is real. And some people, let's say probably the best visual I can think of is a horrific car accident where now every time they try to get in a car, they have flashbacks, right? So to me, I think of traumatic, and it could be abusive relationships. So what is just a simple way, and I say simple because obviously it's more complex and it's not one size fits all. But if I'm sitting here in front of you
Yeah.
and I'm wanting you to help me, and someone out there that goes, gosh, I've always been scared to go to a therapist. I don't know if I'm ready to tackle my trauma and where it came from. What's something you can say or share that can ease people into this world that really it would be very, very beneficial for them?
Well, I would ask, what is the fear
I
of
think I
coming to
think I think
therapy?
vulnerability for a lot of people.
Okay. You're afraid to, I mean, it's scary to be vulnerable and to open,
Right.
to open yourself up to that. And I wonder, where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, again, thankfully I don't particularly suffer from that, as you know
Yeah.
me, but I would think most people, because they want to be accepted. And when they want to be accepted, they want to present that they're all put together. So when they're not put together and they share, I believe they're afraid it's going to be used against them. Like, Brittany, you're cute. We went out. Oh my gosh. All of a sudden you're like crazy. And people are like, oh my gosh, but you're not crazy. You just had something. You need to share it and you're good. So I think people process the surface without understanding that we're all
Yes.
hurting.
Yeah.
We're all hurting.
So it's like addressing that anxiety, right? The anxiety of feeling like if I open up, I'm just going to completely unravel and
Yes,
I can't
right
put it
there.
back in.
Right there.
Yeah.
I think the few things I've heard about people, and like, 'cause I am a big
Yeah.
advocate for therapy.
Yeah.
Because I think it's always good to have someone that you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because they're gonna read through your little facade.
But what I would say is, how long do you want to go trying to hold that all together before it just eventually it's just going to rip open? Like, you can't, that's the thing. And I'm seeing it now in my 40s with friends and relatives, as we all get older, the ones who are so afraid, right? Or who are trying so hard just to like bear it all down, right? And it seeps out.
Yep,
It seeps out, and
100%.
it comes out in ways that are not good.
Britt, we're writing the same book, and
Right?
we'll
Yeah.
co-write a book together, because you're 100% right. I always say, look, if something is hurting, it's gonna come out.
Right.
So the more you're able to talk it, share it, through faith, preferably for those that believe
Yeah.
in faith, I think the better, because ultimately, like you said, you build it, they will come. And that's why I want to talk about this, because I feel that in all therapy, there is some people that talk at you as therapists. It's not welcoming for others. And then you have your style, and your style is what makes you you. You've built the private practice. It's obviously moving and grooving. And I think that's why it's important that people understand that therapy isn't, I would say it's not a luxury. Okay. It's no different than working out. If you want to increase the odds of you being healthy,
Yeah.
workouts help, not just the physical part, but the
Yeah.
emotional part. So for you, what is a story that you can share? Obviously, no names of anything, but what is something that you could feel that has given you almost an Academy Award to yourself? No, it's
I don't know
nice,
if I'm there
right?
yet.
No, but to yourself of a that you saw someone that came to you and you've been able to walk them through, and they're doing better in life because of your work.
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I think it's hard because there's no like clear cut. We're always needing to work on
Of
ourselves, and
course.
there's always more to unpack and more, coming up. But I work predominantly with like young adults and teens, and I have had a couple, teen clients where they've just had major mindset shifts. Specifically a couple who are, the perfectionist type, which is a lot of anxiety, right?
Right.
And with that comes a lot of like they're in their heads ruminating, and kind of they tend towards this negativity, these like catastrophizing. Oh my God, if I don't do this right, everything's going to fall apart.
Right.
And usually like there's a therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy that really addresses that kind of stuff. And like I said, my practice is very eclectic. So I steal a little, of the techniques from, cognitive behavioral therapy with them. But I also help them with my experience with trauma is get them in their bodies, because when you're in your head all the time, you're actually cut off from feeling your emotions. And so these teens, just helping them get more in their bodies, learn to regulate their anxiety, meaning, I give them coping skills
Yeah.
basically on how
Yeah.
to like, soothe themselves. And they realize like, oh, the world's not going to end if I don't get an A in this class or,
Right.
and it feels really good when you start to see them come in and they start talking like what you've been trying to tell them for, months.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they come in and they're like, I had this thought the other day, da, 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 da. And I'm like, I've been trying, I've been trying to tell you that for months, but
Right.
it just like hits them one day, but that's the work. It's like,
Right.
they come in and we talk about it and they may not go home right away and be like, oh yeah, but it seeps in. And as they learn these skills, they kind of have that mindset shift,
Yeah.
right? And that's rewarding as a therapist because you're like, I'm not doing it for them, right? Because like I gave you the example, I could be telling them this for months, right? It's not until they're ready
Yep.
to really take it in and have that shift. That's all them,
Yeah.
but it's exciting to see that they were able to get themselves there.
Well, and that's why I brought that question up. Look at, yeah, maybe Academy Award is a little over the top, but it is rewarding
Yeah,
when,
those moments are rewarding.
yeah,
Yeah.
because look, in my world, obviously I have the real estate, which is amazing and I love it. So I'll use that example
Right.
of building a house.
Yeah.
We build houses well, and we build them with great people. So there's a lot of love and integrity that goes into that. But we started by remodeling in the beginning. And the remodeling was hard, and that's what you're doing. Okay, it's hard work.
Right.
Because it's easier to tear it down and build it back up brand new. But you've got all new pieces. But you are having to take oftentimes people that are broken and they don't even know why they're broken.
Yeah.
Then you're trying to let them in 1 hour, send them back into the world,
Yeah.
tear them down respectfully, build them back up enough where they can head back out and not
Yeah.
spin off. So I give therapists, and you in this case,
Yeah.
a lot of credit because it is important and your work does have value. Because
Yeah.
you gotta remember, at the end of the day, I used to fall into that lie that it's numbers of helping people. And I used to remember my imposter syndrome when I was younger, like, okay, I'm ready to talk to the world. I'm ready to do things. And okay, give me 500 people, give me 1,000, I'm ready. And then I really believe that God said to me, like, you know what, maybe one day, but what you got to do is start with one person at a time. Help one
Yeah.
person at a time, love on them, build them, guide them, and then that
Well, and
seed.
I just got this image as we're talking right now because you use the analogy of flipping houses, but also you're a coach, right?
Yeah.
And it's like when I don't know if back when you used to coach in the gym and stuff, if any of your clients like did competitions or
Yeah, they did.
anything like that. But even you just think of a coach in general, right? You're coaching this athlete, you're guiding them, right? You're showing them how to be better, right?
Yes.
You're kind of cheering them on and then giving them. I don't give advice. I don't say like you should do this or do it this way. I'm more just kind of like, let's think about this. Like what, I'm more collaborative. Like that's the approach. But anyways, going back to the coach analogy, it similarity is like when you see the athlete you're coaching and they win the Super Bowl or they win a fight or they get first place in something, as the coach you're like so proud, but you didn't do that. You weren't there,
In the game with
in
them.
the game with them,
Right.
scoring the goal or whatever. It's the same, it's the same idea, I guess. A therapist is a guide.
Yeah.
I'm not I'm not healing you. You're healing yourself.
Right.
I know more about the mind and emotions and the body. And I'm just kind of, guiding you, kind of coaching you. But I don't want to say coach because there are life coaches that, I don't want to align myself on that end. But, it is kind of that reward when you see that they're like winning in their life,
Well,
they're
look, at the end of
making
the
better choices, they're having better conversations with people that they were afraid to have,
absolutely.
they're like, oh, we've been working for months, like, a client is terrified of confrontation, they don't know how to say no, and then they come in and they're like, oh, I said no and I held a boundary, and you're like, oh my God, like to me
Right.
that's like, them, winning in life,
Yeah. But Britt, that is the very essence of I believe coaching in my world, therapy in your world.
Yeah.
You're just more on the clinical technical side.
Yeah.
But we're both doing similar works on
Similar
different
work. Yeah.
sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
My entire coaching system is not to enable or do it for you.
Right.
It is to ultimately be your guide for
Yeah,
a moment.
I like that
Then
word.
your cheerleader.
Yeah.
And then your support.
Yeah.
Right? You need a little rah-rah along the way sometimes.
do.
But at the end of the day, the old expression, don't feed them, teach them how to cook, how to fish, right?
Right.
Because it is rewarding when I run into somebody and they go, hey, it used to be fitness of some sort of boxing. Now it's more business coaching, and people take their small business. All of a sudden they have 3 employees, 4
And
employees.
you're so proud of that.
And I am very proud of that because I'm like, I helped sow into one person that now is taking care of a family, or now someone that's employing 4 of the jobs is taking care of 6 families, right? So I feel, going back to you, is you have a great honor that all started. Let's now go back. I love going today and backwards for a second, for lack of better, is that this all started because of a road stump that you hit, of a life that wasn't fulfilling, a mom that you felt like, I'm better than this. And then you had every reason to stay on the course that wasn't meant for you. Every reason to just go, well, people, and no, it took courage.
Yeah.
And yes, you surrendered. But then again, just like anything else, you had to do it.
Yeah. And it was hard, I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I surrendered and God carried me through and everything was A-okay, I mean, I couldn't have done it. Okay, I said I couldn't have done it without God guiding me. That's true. But I also couldn't have done it without my own therapist.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you how many sessions I had with her where I was like, I just want this to be over already. Like, I just want to have my life, right?
Yeah.
And I'm very free spirit. I'm a Sagittarius. So if you're familiar with, I don't like to be boxed in. I don't like to be held down. I don't like routine. I don't, that's all really hard for me. And the path that I chose was like, it wasn't a start your business and you're on your way. It was like, I had to lay brick by brick by brick. I had to go to school. I had to pass the classes. I had to, get a certain amount of hours. When you're getting licensed, you have to get 3,000 hours of clinical work, where you're working under someone else's license.
So just again, I'm going to just highlight a couple things.
Yeah.
How many hours?
3,000.
Okay. So again, for someone that's free-spirited, or as you put, Sagittarius,
Yeah.
right? You are now literally being spoon-fed everything that you almost not against, but like
No, it was
is against
so,
the tide.
It felt like that. And my therapist was like, Brittany, you're building the foundation. You've got to.
How many times did you not want to hear those words?
Oh my God. I mean, I felt like a broken record to her because I was like, it's just not fair. Like, and she's like, you have to, you can't skip over these steps, right? And my spirit is like, I just want to jump to the end and I just want it all to
You
be
remind
done.
me of the butterfly, right? And I know we've used
Yeah.
this example, right? Because you want to be flying pretty and
Yep.
everything is good, but we all know what happens when you break the cocoon too early.
Right.
The wings don't form.
Oh, there's no foundation, right? It's like you're building castles in the sky, and I
Yeah.
had to keep, after my sessions, I'd be like, you're right. Okay. I just gotta, it's like, climbing that mountain one step at a time. I can't,
Listen, 3,000 hours, I don't care what you're doing for 3,000 hours, that's a lot.
it was
So,
hard.
congrats on
it
that.
was, you need it though. Like I learned so much. It was such a great experience, but there were those moments where I'm like, living at my parents' house, I'm barely getting by financially, and you're just, you're like, when is this all going to end? But so I got, had the help of my therapist who really helped me see things for, what they were and really helped kind of rah me,
Yeah.
to the
Well,
end,
and
to the
that's-
finish line. It's like, when you're running a marathon, right? And you're just like, you want to stop because you're tired and you're just like, I'm over it. And
Right.
it's like, but you can't, you got to keep
Well,
going.
we always talk about that expression, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Because look, a marathon is 32.5, I think, right? Give or take. So you could be at 27 miles
Yeah.
and be done, quit, and that's it. You didn't run a marathon. No one cares.
But you didn't run the marathon.
You did not.
You didn't do it.
No, well, I did 3/4. No one talks 3/4. No one
Yeah.
says half unless you sign
Yeah.
up for a half.
Yeah.
Right. Same with you. Like no one's going to give a reward for doing 2,575 hours.
No, you don't get it. You don't
No.
get the license. You don't, you
don't.
wasted all that time and for what?
And for what? Which go to the next part of the why for you is what kept you going? Because aside from I know the therapist.
My therapist.
Yes, that was the tangible that kept you going. But what inspirational when you left it, when you were in your car, when you had to go,
Yeah.
aside from your faith and the surrender and your therapist, internally, what went through your head? Because before you answer, remember,
good question.
there's people listening that are on the verge of quitting, or they need to quit something that isn't good for them to pivot their life to go after what they need. You had the courage to do that. So now that you're in it, you're at 2,500 hours, but you could see the light, but you're not there. After the rah-rah of the therapist,
Yeah.
internally, what kept you going?
I think just knowing, having that goal and that vision of what I wanted to accomplish, and
Yeah,
if you give up and you quit, then what?
yeah.
Then at that point you're so close, but let's even say I at the beginning of the hours and I'm, wanting to give up because I'm just like, this is just too hard. And I just don't see myself being able to get, that far. That probably would have been easier for some people to quit then, right?
Right.
When they're not so close to the end. I mean, I feel like at 25, like your example, it's like from in my mindset, I'm like, okay, I'm so close. Like
Right.
it's so close. Like you just gotta get there. And
No, I understand what you're saying. You're saying for some people, once they turn the corner and they made it finish the school, but now they start the next part, the
yeah, and then they might be
hours.
like, ugh. And there were some people I remember in my program who were like, I think I'm just gonna like do coaching or do this or that because they didn't want
The 3,000
the
hours.
3,000 hours. They just wanted to start, But in my mind, I had a goal, I had a vision. I knew, for me, I wouldn't have felt confident
Right.
yet. Like I still had so much I felt I needed to learn and from just my own path, I was very at that point determined
Yeah.
to have the end result. And so I think just continuing to see, to go back to that vision and that goal and the desire, I guess, won. The desire to have that end result was greater than my desire to quit. So
Well,
I can't say that's the same for everyone, but for me, it was just like I knew that was what I felt called to do after all of the moments of surrender and asking for that clarity and then coming to that moment of truth and just kind of really feeling in my heart that's what I was being called to do. And it was like to do that, I had to meet these milestones. I had to accomplish these things.
100%. And I asked you that question, and I think it was a brilliant answer, and it was a real answer. And look at a lot of people focus so much on the goals that they forget it's not the goal that is not attained. It's the habits and the path in which to accomplish the little things to then hit that goal.
Yeah.
You had a drive, and you said it perfect because I love that quote too. Your desire to succeed has to exceed the desire to quit or your desire to give up.
I think for me too, it was the accountability, which I got through therapy, which is I'm someone who doesn't like routine. I don't like, these things. And that hasn't helped me in my life. That
Right.
hasn't gotten me to where I, was successful or happy, And so also having that accountability to myself that like I need to do this for myself, for my growth, and so it's just kind of being like, okay, Brittany, like, yeah, it's hard and you want to just, go have fun or you want to, not have to wait, you want to be rich now or you want to have, your career now, but this is good for you. This is going to grow you, right? In the cocoon, it's going to ultimately grow you into who you want to be. And so I think there needs to be a level, and obviously I'm in a field, therapy, what I went to school for, right?
Right.
That helps you be accountable because it's like in my program, I had to go to therapy, which I wanted to, but right. I wanted to be in therapy, but you also have to be. So,
Right.
People in the program. So, you have to do your own therapy and then you're around, other therapists. So it's easy to kind of talk through these things and kind of hold yourself accountable and know. So, but I'm trying to think of people who are in other fields that aren't as, going through that inner process of really acknowledging these blocks, right? These things that stand in our way. I think I was fortunate because of the field I'm in where I was really confronted with what stands in my way.
Sure.
Right. So I was that accountability of like, okay, I'm not going to do what I usually do, which is like, this is too hard. I'm going to go try something else. Like I did in my 20s, I'm like, no, I'm going to stick through,
And that's huge, Britt. I mean, again, I part of what I love doing is highlighting some of the accomplishments because you already know, for lack of a better word, the failures that got you here. And that's good because without failures, we don't become who we're meant to be.
Yeah.
People don't normally like that word. I love that word because here's what that word means to me.
Yeah.
Failure means you tried something. Okay.
I love that because that used to stand in my way, like the fear of failure, right? Where I was like, oh, I can't do that.
Well, it's the same thing that you asked earlier. What are you scared of therapy? And my my conclusion, I think, is
Yeah.
people are scared to be vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
But it's also the way you look at failure. See, to me, Henry, you go in so confident into something. I'm like, well, yes, but I'm not scared of the outcome because the outcome is either going to help confirm you're on the right path or confirm you are not on the right path. Either way, it confirms something.
Well, and that's why I love reading autobiographies or biographies of like famous people or successful people, because it's like you see how many times they failed.
Yes.
Right? Because you only hear from what you think about, people in the public eye. You think like, oh, they just,
Right.
were really talented and just got it,
Right.
and they were really smart in business and they just became successful, or they had a really great idea. And yeah, sometimes that happens, but that's the rare few. Most people and all the biographies I've read, it's like they failed and failed and failed and failed. I just watched a documentary on, I forget which famous actress from like the 50s who was so talented, so beautiful. And she was like, could not get a role for, I think it was Katharine Hepburn. And she was doing theater in New York in like the 40s or whenever. And it was like, no one wanted her, no one wanted her, no one
Yep.
wanted her for like a few years. And could have given up. I mean, I would have been
Right.
like, I suck. Nobody likes me.
Right, right.
But with these stories, that's inspiring is like these people, their will and the desire
Yep.
outweighed
The challenges.
the challenges, right?
Yeah.
So they just kept going. Something in them was like, no, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm meant to be, and they just kept going, and eventually, you make it, right? I forget, was it Tesla who or no, who's the guy that invented electricity or something?
As far as like,
Showing how like unknowledgeable I am
no,
in
it's okay.
something.
Like Thomas Edison. You
Yeah,
mean? Like,
I think it was Edison. Like he
he
had,
had over 1,000 different.
yeah, and they all got
denied
and
failed. Yeah.
and then hello, we know him as like,
Well, you said a beautiful
genius,
thing. You're right. You said sometimes we all have the persona of someone's success and what it took. But see, to me, going back to the butterfly example we talked about, what that cocoon stage is, it's strengthening your wings and forming them, right? So from a caterpillar to a butterfly.
Yeah.
So let's look at the hard knocks of life. If you didn't go through what you went through,
yeah,
separate from the therapist and God and your family, you out there by yourself
Yeah.
wouldn't have had the strength, the intuition to withstand that.
Not
And
me
yes,
personally, no.
No, and you would have, and yes, you've had your moments of like, oh my gosh, I'm in business for myself. But at the end of the day, all those hardships have brought you and strengthened you.
yeah,
And that's the beauty of why I love that word, failure. Because to me, I don't
Yeah.
think of it for what it stands. It is a try. That means I'd rather take, and I did a quote the other day that I posted, and it said, it's easier to go from failure to success than excuses to success.
Oh yeah,
Okay?
Yeah.
Because when you're failing, you are again confirming one road or the other. And when you become really good at failing, you then will make less because you're going to respond to it faster.
Well, and you're learning, right?
That's what I'm saying. And you're applying it.
And, I'm thinking, probably most of the people that are listening to this aren't, in my field, right? They're more business or, whatever other field. I'm trying to think of who's
going to listen to my show?
Who's going to listen to your show? But I think I am such a poster child of someone who's not business savvy. I don't have that mindset. I'm not a Tony Robbins. I'm not a, Coach Henry. I'm not naturally inclined, right? Where there
Right.
are people that are just naturally really gifted at those attributes, right? They
Right.
just like are driven, they're organized, they're, they know how to hustle and they know how to get there. That is not me. So I have to say, and I want to put this out there that if, there are people listening to this who feel that they're kind of their own worst enemy in those ways because they want to be successful, but they just can't get themselves there. From what I've learned is not only do you need to surrender to a higher power, but I think having a coach, because for me, I didn't have a coach. I had a therapist. And then I also, had my colleagues who were therapists, just like being in that world just helped me be accountable.
Yep.
Helped me see where I was in my own way and helped me stick through it. Right.
Right.
But not everybody, is in a field that kind of promotes having that help and accountability. So yeah.
And I agree with you.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. What you're saying is you are very blessed to be in a field where that's naturally put into a system. Yes. I got you.
So, I think that would be my biggest advice out there to people listening, it's like, yeah, okay, maybe you have a bunch of excuses and maybe you don't feel like you can do it alone and maybe you can't. So I think having someone, definitely having that surrender and that faith, but also having someone like you, Coach Henry, or a therapist, or both, to really help them hold themselves accountable. Right.
100%, Britt. Look, and I'll say this because I want to live to the final why with you in a minute with our time. I love that time always flies with us, but it's this. If I'm going to build a house, and unless I'm an architect,
right,
you need to hire someone that can design what you're thinking.
Yep.
And even an architect, guess what? They don't go build it. They find someone that can build their vision.
Yeah.
The point is everyone needs someone.
Yep.
All of us do.
Yeah.
And the wise words that I want to say that you shared was find what you need to help you become your best.
Yep.
If that's a therapist, great. If that's a coach to guide you, great. Sometimes even both.
Yep.
But ultimately, that leads me to the last why for you.
Yes.
So I want to make sure we have a couple minutes to share this point to everybody.
Okay.
And we're going to have you back on here again because it's great. The last why is what are you doing with it now? You went through everything. You did the pivot, the redirection. You've built your own practice. You're in a good place.
Yeah.
So at this moment, I always like to encourage people to remind all of us, including myself, it's not about us. It's about God is doing through us.
Yeah.
What is the blessing that we're going to bring to somebody else? So what is next for you? I'm not going to hold you to it. But I know this is outside your comfort zone. I know you well enough to know that.
Yeah.
You give me that stink eye. But I needed to put that question out there for you is, what does it look like? What do you feel is starting to kind of build for you? That's your next stage. Just kind of verbally share it out there and we'll let it rest there.
Yeah. Well, I kind of, am in the early stages of wanting to reach more people, so looking at whether that is branching out into coaching so I can do a little bit, with therapy, it's very, there's a lot of, like I said, it's not advice giving, right? It's a slower process of really helping people kind of unpack their inner stuff, right?
I always say, Britt, it's like a pot roast simmer,
yes.
right? You got to really simmer it. It's not like a drive-through.
And that's really important work, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's that. But with coaching, it's like you're able to be more direct. You're able to give advice. You're able to kind of just like for people who are just looking for more of like I said, like specific guidance or specific things. And then, I eventually want, to release some like online content of like courses or workshops, again, so that I can reach more people with my knowledge and just my approach,
And I just want to leave that there, Britt, because look, I'm a supporter and encourager of you. And I think that group will allow people that never thought. Because I think, and I hope you receive this from me, when you do group, you're not there to fix anyone anytime. You're there to expose people that feel it's all or nothing. And there's a good gray in life, Britt. There's a good gray. And I think if you have a little group setting and some people are able to share and then they can go, you know what? you're actually pretty cool. I feel I can speak to you. And that leads to people that need the more one-on-one, or it leads them to some your own future books and things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave it there because that's a great why, and you answered it perfectly. So thank you.
Yeah.
And every time you don't act on it, I'm going to replay this moment. And because I do feel that is my part, is that there is a good gray. So, guys, we're short on time. Britt and I just we fly through this.
Yeah.
But there was some great tidbits. Britt, any last things you want to share? And then we're gonna have to have you back up here, and then
Yeah.
obviously we'll put some information in our post on where they can reach you.
Great.
Anything you want to say as we say
Yeah.
goodbye?
Thank you for having me. This was fun. I feel like we only touched the surface.
Yeah.
So,
And that's the beauty of that. You're right. And that's why I want people to know that failure is awesome because that means you're trying and there's a good gray.
Yeah.
So I'll see you in the good gray. Britt, guys,
Love
thank
it.
you for tuning in. Till the next time, thanks for Positive Attraction with Coach Henry.